massacred all the French, but the whites who fought with them, the Polish and the Germans, as it says expressly in the 1805 Constitution, were not only not killed, were now classified as black people. They killed all of the French left on the island, 4,000 or 5,000 people. But these are the same French who just embarked on a war of extermination against them. And remember, there were still French troops on the island. They were just on the other half of the island, what now is the Dominican Republic. So it's not like France stopped posing a threat the moment they got their independence. In fact, not only were French troops in the other half of the island, they were agitating in the other half of the island. So this is the context in which that massacre takes place.
That's basically what the Haitian Revolution was about. Africans dying bravely, whether it was getting boiled, whether it was drowning, gassed, shot, beheaded, burnt at the stake.
We had a culture where swording, fencing was a part of our culture. Lancing, using lances was a part of our culture. Going back even to South Africa with the Zulu nation. When Shaka took a long lance and created a short lance, he created both a spear and a sword. And so that's a part of African culture, going all the way back to ancient Egypt.
A lot of them had military training in African traditions, people freshly arrived from Africa. And then they had the military training of fighting for their different colonial master against another colonial master. But a lot of the tactics they used were what today we'd call guerrilla warfare. They didn't fight in the way, they knew they couldn't defeat a European army of 20,000 people, 80,000 people. They've got much less sophisticated arms, they've got way more arms, etc. in a face-to-face European-style empire versus empire battle. So they used guerrilla warfare, they used raiding techniques.
Primarily, what you have is the people who know their ecology. If you've been to Haiti, Haiti has a terrain of hills and mountains and plateaus, and if you are the African, you live in that every day. You plant there, you till the grounds there, you hunt there, and so you master that terrain.
The sisters, in many ways, supplied the force, created the environment for the men to do what needed to be done. Sisters are very important to any revolution. In fact, ain't nobody having a revolution without women. In fact, if you think you're doing that, it's just a fight. It ain't a revolution.
Sanité Bélair, for instance, when they caught her, her husband was General Charles Bélair, right? And he negotiated for her release. And you know, these white settlers, they never, you know, they betray whatever. They have no honor, okay? So when he gave himself up, they took both of them, okay? So that's Sanité Bélair and Charles Bélair, the general. And so they sentenced her to a beheading because she was a woman, and then they sent him to get shot. And she refused. She said, I will die the honorable way with my husband. They wanted to blindfold her. And she said, no, you don't need to blindfold me because I'm a woman.
When they ordered to take her head and put it under, they fought and fought with her and couldn't do it. And in the end, she gave the orders. Soldiers, position. Don't make me wait. Fire!
The Haitian leaders understood that it would not be conducive to them to try to get individual gains to the detriment of the collective society. So they were smart enough to understand, I'm not going to try to get little trinkets for myself while everybody else is suffering under this oppressive system. Enough of them understood that, because in any society you're going to have collaborators, but enough of them understood that we cannot collaborate with these white supremacists because it's not going to be beneficial to us collectively.
Yeah, the Haitian Revolution, the Africans are given a bad rep. These are people who were enslaved. As far as I'm concerned, if you want to own me and buy and sell my children, I'm well within my rights to do absolutely anything to get free from you. And I think all of us looking back 2 centuries hence can see that. If someone tried to sell your children, what would you do? You'd do anything you could do to stop them selling your children. And any self-respecting human would. Why should it be any different 2 centuries ago?
Toussaint Louverture opened the pathway for freedom and independence. But the man who doesn't get enough credit for bringing the revolution to victory is Jean-Jacques Dessalines.
two different characters, two different people who handle things differently. Two different spirit, I would say also. Because if we take it in our own worldview, in the Vodun worldview, when you analyze Toussaint, Toussaint is a Legba. Legba is the spirit that comes to open the way and trace the road. When you analyze Dessalines, Dessalines is an Ogu. That's the one who comes to make things happen by any means necessary.
But it's also really interesting how people like Jean-Jacques Dessalines become a military genius within the space of 10 or 15 years, with no formal military training in the way that we understand it. And that's one of the inexplicable things. But again, it comes down to human intelligence and the human capacity for genius and desire to be free.
Dessalines is definitely not Dahomey. I am certain of it. But it is a Dahomean woman who taught him Yoruba and taught him how to fight, how to do his Tantoya, who raised him. And not just any woman, it was a military woman, because Dahomey had two armies, a female army and a male army, and this woman was an officer in the female army of Dahomey when she was captured and brought into slavery. So she went right into work to raise some of the young ones that she, in a certain way, adopted, and Dessalines seemed to have been her prized.
Tantoya is significant because she taught the greatest hero to ever live how to do hand-to-hand combat when he was a teenager, how to shoot. She taught him everything he knew, because he was enslaved. But she had come from a warrior background.
I don't recall seeing anywhere where Toussaint was beaten, whereas Dessalines was constant. His entire back was whooped with scars that healed and hurt again and healed, and huge big blobs of scars all over his back.
And Dessalines, as opposed to Toussaint, did not have the love of the French military. He had a deep understanding of the European exploitation. He also had a deep understanding of the ruthlessness of the various European populations when they were taking out vengeance on the African population.
See, the difference between Toussaint and Dessalines, Toussaint wanted to make deals with the white supremacists. Toussaint felt he was a military man. He had some kind of camaraderie with the French. He felt that he could make deals. He was somewhat one of them. They would respect him as a military man, and that was his downfall. Now, Dessalines, he knew, and he's really the only modern African leader who understood that you cannot make deals with terrorists. You can't make deals with white supremacy. White supremacy is the ultimate form of terrorism. And Dessalines was the only person who was smart enough to realize that, and he got all the white supremacists off the island.
That's the story. So he was enslaved African. He was definitely beaten a lot. He ended up being bought by a free black man. So, those assimilated Negroes could do some good things if they want. His name was Jean-Baptiste Dessalines, the free black man who bought him and gave him his freedom. But Dessalines never forgot what slavery was about.
So what Dessalines did is, you buried alive 500 Africans, he hung 500 French. For everything that Rochambeau did, Dessalines did the same thing.
Add up all of those different characteristics, the topography, the geography, the guerrilla warfare, the use of arson, etc., you begin to understand how and why the Africans on the island were able to prevail.
At the end of the war, it was really bloody. And I think there was a point in time where Rochambeau had killed thousands, and he matched them, like head for head.
I mean, one of the raids I've learned about was a raid Dessalines undertook, where they raided a French camp with just machetes. Now imagine you're a heavily armed French camp, and a bunch of dudes waltz into your camp with just machetes and chop you up. The level of bravery and arrogance almost that takes to go and face the French with just machetes.
The other piece to remember is you have St. Lucia, Tobago, and Martinique. Those are other three islands that the French are reinstating the enslavement process. And what the Haitian people are doing and Dessalines are doing is he's watching that and he's saying, look, it won't be long. If they can get those surrounding islands back where they were years ago, then they're going to come over here next. So Dessalines, he said straight out, he said, we are going to take care of these cannibals.
The British Army came here in 1801 with over 30,000 soldiers, and saying that it didn't want to waste too much time, wanted to do a rapid operation, and in less than a couple of weeks was going to take over the island. Well, he didn't know there was a man here called Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Toussaint Louverture was there too, but the main man on the ground was Dessalines. And sure enough, they had to leave on the ground. As they run back to their boats, they had to leave 25,000 troops on the ground. And that's the largest loss of the British Army in the entire America.
A lot of the Haitians came from places like Angola. When we think of Angola, we hear about capoeira. Capoeira is one of the fighting styles. Now, capoeira, people think that it's Brazilian. Capoeira is not Brazilian. As a matter of fact, the Portuguese banned capoeira from Brazil up until the 1930s because they didn't want those Africans using that, because the Africans were using that to free themselves in Brazil, beating the Portuguese. You had brothers like Zumbi, who was from Angola, and they were using the OG capoeira. The capoeira that we know now is watered down because it's based on an oral tradition, because they burned the books and the instruction manuals and got rid of those down in Brazil because they knew that Africans getting a hold of that knowledge, that was very dangerous. So a lot of those African fighting skills, like capoeira, these are old African systems that we transferred to each other, and many of the Haitians, they tap back into those fighting skills. Stick fighting, capoeira, different types of African martial arts, and these were the skills they used to beat the French off them.
The Haitians had a certain resilience about them, where they applied science a lot of times, and science is very strong, so there's powders that are created, and these powders are not gunpowders, but if you spit it in someone's face, there's ways to numb them. And this is all science.
So our brothers and sisters in Haiti had an understanding of nature where they used nature. They knew how to use weather. They knew how to use the trees to cover themselves, to hide themselves.